On today's episode, we're going to be trying out our very first French dish. We're going to take a field trip, go over a little bit of history, and of course, we're going to learn how to make this home-style classic at, well, home. A while ago, I drove down to Irvine to bum off my friend's sofa and try out some awesome food. We covered the lobster noodles back in time for Christmas, but I totally forgot to cover this place. It's called Bouillon, and you might know them by their sister restaurant Moulin, which is a bit of a chain down here. I saw a few of them. They specialize in French bistro food, and we stopped by for a quick lunch. We started off with the pot de rillette, which is basically a fatty pork spread served with some croutons. It's real good, but this is what we're here for. Hachis Parmentier is basically a French name for a cottage pie, and this one is made with a slowly braised beef topped with super buttery mashed potatoes and breadcrumbs. The filling is rich and meaty, and the salad on the side cuts through and balances that really well with some nice acidity. It's a really good dish, the perfect comfort dish for a rainy, chilly day, which we've been getting a lot of up here in the north. Also, my friend got a piece of fish, which was really good. I like this place, they have the basics down pat, and that's always nice to see. If Orange County is just a little bit too far for you, no worries. Hachis Parmentier perfection is only minutes away. For the uninitiated, this name seems kinda crazy, but let me break it down for you. Hachis means basically finely chopped or minced, which refers to the meat filling, and Parmentier is the name of a dude. Antoine Augustin Parmentier was a well-known 18th century pharmacist who is famous for his service to Napoleon, as well as his role in convincing the French that potatoes were edible. The potato is a New World crop that came to Europe along the Columbian Exchange, along with tomatoes, corn, chili peppers, and some other stuff. And when it first found its way ashore, traders had a heck of a time trying to convince people that it wasn't going to poison them or give them Hansen's disease, aka leprosy. And that's where my man Parmentier came in. After a short stint in a Prussian prison where he pretty much only ate potatoes, he saw the nutritional benefits of this strange tuber and set himself on a mission to incorporate it into the French diet. He would send bouquets of potato blossoms to the king and queen, he submitted potato bread into competitions for wheat flour alternatives, and according to legend, he would make a whole show by hiring armed guards to protect fields of potatoes during the day and then leave them unguarded at night to try to trick people into stealing them and bringing them home. Although this myth seems to be part of almost every country that had a hard time accepting potatoes. Eventually, after a few bad wheat harvests in the late 1700s, there was a lot of forced change, like this. But the famine that resulted led to rapid agricultural restructuring, including a wider acceptance of the potato, which was all made easier by extensive campaigning and research from Parmentier. These days, tons of different dishes featuring potatoes bear his name, and even though Parmentier probably had nothing to do with this version of cottage pie, which likely has 18th century English origins, his name still carries on. To get started, there are so many ways to make Hachis Parmentier. It's a really home-style dish, and it's more often than not made with leftovers. A lot of traditional recipes call for leftover meat from pot-au-feu, which is basically a beautiful rustic beef stew, which I'll have to make on a different day. More contemporary home recipes look a lot like shepherd's pie and go without leftovers by using minced beef and veggie sauteed up fresh, and that's what we're gonna do today. We'll start with the potatoes. Just peel and boil them in some heavily salted water until you can easily break them with a fork. These are Yukon Gold potatoes. Always go for like more of a waxy type potato for this sort of dish rather than the russets, which is more of a starchy type, which can get a little bit gritty. Just mash it up nicely. It helps to pass it through a sieve, which makes it super fine, and then mix it with the butter until combined, then add in the egg yolks, cream, and a little bit of white pepper. Give it a taste and adjust with more salt and pepper as needed. For the other veggies, just peel and dice up some carrots nice and fine. These guys are going to bring some real nice sweetness, and the same goes for the onions. Saute these guys in a bit of oil. I'm using clarified butter here for extra flavor, and when the onions are nice and translucent, toss in some minced garlic and stir for 30 seconds. Then you can add in your beef. I got some 80-20 ground chuck here, and I happen to have a little bit of spare Wagyu boneless short rib lying around, so we'll cut that up and add it in too. Fry that off until the beef is completely brown but not caramelized, which can sort of mess up the texture later on, and then add in your tomatoes. I grated a fresh tomato for this dish. I like the acidity that it brings, but a lot of people also like to use tomato paste or even no tomato at all, so it's up to you. I also added in some homemade beef broth. You could also add in wine. Most recipes I've either seen use white wine or a soft red Pinot Noir or no wine at all. I opted for a splash of some dry sherry for a little bit of pop, but again, it's totally optional. Some herbs also help brighten the dish up, and I added in a sprinkle of dried thyme and oregano from my garden and a bay leaf. Bring that up to a simmer and then let it coast on medium-low until the beef gets nice and tender, which takes about 30 minutes if you use straight up ground beef and a little over an hour if you also added in short ribs. Be sure to stir it every once in a while to keep it from burning, and add in some more water if you see it getting a bit dry while we talk some potato toxicology. We were talking about those French potato phobes back in the day, but as it turns out, those potato poison fears might not have been so crazy after all. And that's because while the tubers themselves are totally safe to eat, the leaves and stems can be pretty nasty indeed. And that's because nightshades like eggplant, tomato, and indeed potato plants all contain a toxic substance known as solanine in their leaves. Solanine is a glycoalkaloid, meaning that it's a naturally occurring organic compound containing nitrogen with a sugar attached to it. This compound is found in the leaves and sometimes the tubers of plants in the Solanum genus of the nightshade family. It is quite bitter, and while the mechanism of action is not fully understood, what is known is that apoptosis or programmed cell death is prematurely activated in cells exposed to solanine. It's actually so good at killing cells that it's being researched as a potential cancer treatment drug, and when ingested, solanine can cause GI effects like nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, burning sensations in the mouth, and even death in extreme cases, so avoid it. Solanine is found in highest concentrations in the green parts, meaning the leaves and stems of Solanum plants. These effects are actually amplified in the Atropa genus, aka the deadly nightshade, where all parts of the plant from the root to the fruit are toxic. And that's the version that grows wild in Central, Southern, and Eastern Europe, which would probably explain a bit of early apprehension to welcoming their cousins to the dinner table. It's been about an hour and the meat is fork tender, so we're gonna ladle out some of the excess fat and let the meat reduce a bit. It's hard to say how much you should reduce it, but I like to aim for any liquid in the pot to be about an inch below the top of the meat and for it to be thick instead of soupy. This is good, so I'm gonna just adjust the seasoning to taste with a little bit of salt and then pour it out into our cooking vessel. Tap it to settle evenly and then sort of paste on the potatoes. You can drag a fork across the top like a rake to get a bit of a crosshatch pattern and then top it off with a sprinkle of cheese. I'm using this really nice Gruyere. Bake it in a preheated oven set to 400 degrees or until the top is nicely browned and a little bit crispy. You might want to turn on the broiler for the last few minutes or so if it's taking a long time. Let it rest on the counter for at least 10 minutes to sort of chill out for a bit, which is going to both help the otherwise soupy pie set to be a bit more solid and also keep you from burning off the inside of your mouth. It's been a bit of a wait, but once the pie has rested, it is truly a sight to behold. The cheese is crisp, the filling is ultra tender, and the mash on top is like a buttery, creamy cloud. But as we all know, taste is king, and this does not disappoint. Both the mince and the cube short rib are melt in your mouth tender and perfectly seasoned, super meaty and delicious. The potatoes are really the star here. The sieve that we did earlier helps make them ultra smooth, and the butter and cream are just the cherry on top. Something Monsieur Parmentier would be proud to eat, probably. This is the ultimate cottage pie, and you're not going to change my mind. Anyway, that's it for today, and like always, if you liked what you saw, be sure to hit that like button down below. It really helps us out. Also, I really love making what you guys suggest, so let me know your favorite dish in the comment section below, and I'll add it to the list. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an awesome day.
But every time I would go outside and there would be my dog Mary's paw prints everywhere. And then she'll always find me because she knew I always have food in the morning. And I used to just give her potato peels and I would eat the potato. But one day, I don't know what got into her. She's like, argh. So I'm like, okay, I'll give you more. And then she'll, and then she went, and this time she was showing her teeth and everything. And I freaked out and I went, and I dropped the entire potato. I mean, not that it was big. It was only about this size. It's not that big, right? And I dropped the whole thing and she devoured it. And after that, our relationship changed. Whenever I was alone with food, she would just go, and I would go, and give her food. And I think that was the reason why the next several decades of my life, I was afraid of dogs.